Hello, beautiful people of Living with the Spirit Raw Talks podcast listeners. And today we have a brilliant episode coming up for you about personal power. We will discuss what we believe is personal power and how we use it. And we will see where it takes us. But before I say hello to my identical twin comrades, they look exactly, so all of us are wearing white today. If you're listening to the audio, we look identical. But I just want to give a little bit of a heads up that January 7 we are launching our retreats for the New Year's, and we're starting off with a bang with a men's retreat. We have 3 spots out of 4 that is booked already, so we have 1 spot left. If this is yours, grab it as soon as you can. They will run out. So in 30 seconds, guys, what is the men's retreat about?
Full masculine embodiment, polarities, and really going to get in a group as men and cultivate it. That's something we don't do in a healthy ways many times today in society. We do it in a way that we are conditioned to do. So we want to go through what does it mean to be a man, and how can we cultivate that essence physically, mentally, emotionally, and also spiritually during a 3-week retreat here at Living with Spirits.
Wow, that was great.
Good job.
All right, moving into personal power, which is something that we definitely will touch upon in the men's retreat, because I mean it's equally as important for women, but it's really one of the foundations of the cultivate the yang energy of the personal power. But Simba, how would you describe personal power?
It's a very interesting topic, because just like we said prior to coming on live, it can go in many different ways when you talk about this. And it has changed for me. The way I look at it today was not the way that I came into it. So I will share where I came from it, like how I used to look at it, and how I'm looking at it and or practicing cultivating it today, because I think that could be an interesting reference for listeners to hear where you can come from and how it can change. So I looked at it as my ability to be a go-getter before. Yeah, I have motivation, I have energy, I have drive, I can manifest, I can push through, and I can get all of these things that I want, health, money, fame, or whatever it is, that I was looking for at that time. And it's been a lot of different goals throughout my life, right? Within sports, within career, within academics, and so on. And it was a lot about finding power, finding ways to get power, like this technique, this method, this way of doing something was about getting power. So I have more than others. I can get to a certain point, right? So it was quite competitive and quite self-inflated, I would say, actually, too, because it was really about bringing me forward to have more than others. And it wasn't always coming from that point of view. It wasn't always coming from a narcissistic point of view. I always shared things with people, but at the core, that was still what was going on, right? It was feeling a lack within me that drove me to want to have more than others so I can feel safe. And, that is the absolute opposite of how I look at it today. When I look at things like abundance, there is enough for everyone. It's an overflow. So today it's probably going to be the opposite when I look at personal power. It's more about being devoted to a practice, both for me, but also for the collective good, and to practice it over a period of time, whether it's a philosophy you follow, or a martial art, or an energy practice, or lifestyle philosophy, that you're cultivating your power within that practice so you can manifest your life. You can really build your own life up. And it's not really that strange when you look at it. Just imagine some point in your life you wanted to maybe party, right? And then maybe you started studying, and then maybe you went to sports, and then maybe you wanted to travel, and then you wanted a family, a career. So you will have different trajectories, and your personal power is your ability, your juice, your fuel that can help you go towards that direction, right? Not necessarily to get to a goal, but that's the fuel that brings us forward towards our intention, towards our purpose. And why we call it personal power is because no one else can really do it for you, right? People can show you, they can guide you, but it's really your journey, your, you can call it spiritual life juice or whatever you want to call it. It's really building up your life force to drive you towards wherever you're going, to continue to go there and have stamina, vitality, motivation, creativity. And sometimes that means doing nothing. Sometimes that means just sitting down, meditating, letting things come to you. Sometimes means that you are working towards going somewhere.
Isn't it the ability to know when to do what, like to have that knowing of when to rest and when to push, and like it's like a deep understanding of the self. And it feels like it's when you describe like your how you used to do it, it felt like you were looking for something like external to give you power, but it feels like the personal power is like an internal power. And I think some people might call it like spiritual power sometimes, that it's like this, that for me personal power has a very like a very practical sense, and then there's a mystical sense to it. It's this energy that you cultivate that does not make you burned out. It's like when you, it's almost like when I started to connect to my purpose, that I got this extra energy from somewhere. It's like I had, I mean, I've always had a high capacity, but previously I used to get burned out. I used energy that I didn't have any abundance of, and now it feels like I'm fueling from somewhere else. And that feels like it's the personal power or the spiritual power, or like it's like a universal power almost. It's like I expand my capacity to hold more personal power, if that makes any sense. I think also that's what we're talking about in the shamanic training a lot. They talk about spiritual power and like being able to hold more, like stretching oneself, like working out.
Yeah. I mean, and it's similar in, I think it's similar in all disciplines. It just looks different. People use different language. That's why people say, "Oh, that sounds strange and woo-woo." But essentially, we're talking about the same thing. It's just very different vantage points, right? Like you said, there's a discernment knowing when to work, when to rest, and it's about finding a different way to cultivate, to harness, to have that energy that pulls you forward, right? So you could look at it as what you were doing before was more adrenaline and survival based. It's like I'm sitting in a boat and I'm rowing like crazy because I have to get somewhere, because
Yeah, it was
otherwise I'm gonna
fear-based,
starve
100%.
and starve. There's no water. I'm out in the ocean,
Yep.
right? And the personal power would be more, raise, hoist a sail, use the wind. Sometimes I row, sometimes I use the wind, sometimes I sit still and wait for the next point, right?
Yeah.
It's knowing when to do what, and also your capacity, right? Your one of our teachers call it the bandwidth too, like the space, like how spaciousness you are to hold space for yourself, but for others, for your vision. Like many clients that I coach that wants to be self-employed and have their own business, and I said, okay, your nervous system and your whole being, your personal power must be ready to carry something like this.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like, oh, I want this and that, and then you get it and you're like, oh my god, you need to be prepared for something like that to come, otherwise it won't come to you because it will crumble you, right? And that won't be beneficial. Usually it will be a lesson, maybe an experience, but it won't be as beneficial. So I think that's where it comes from when someone says you gotta earn something before you get it, right? Like you have to be energetically prepared to receive it, right? Mentally, emotionally, physically. Your nervous system must be prepared to take in that capacity. I mean, I was doing the theory provider training program with 4 people. I have 16, and I was like, oh my God, that's not possible. And it's like, yes, it is. But it was just a belief system. Like, I think this is how much energy levels I have. And sometimes you need to test that to see really where you're at. And sometimes you don't need to test it. Sometimes you need to start at a lower level and kind of build yourself up. So yeah, definitely beingness and the capacity, like you said, the more that capacity expands, more space you can naturally hold. And I think a lot of the ways to get personal power is not always necessarily what you do, is what you don't do, right? What you avoid doing that's costing you energy. And also all the old luggage, baggage, shadows that we're carrying around, like trauma and so on, because they cost vast amount of energy and they don't allow us to go forward. They're actually eating of our personal power.
Mark, you had a beautiful like summary, like how you viewed it.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking about how we always think about things living with the spirit from the body, mind, spirit perspective. And I was just thinking about what personal power means to me. And from a bodily perspective, the physical perspective, I was thinking like stamina, longevity, and momentum are ways that you experience personal power through your body. From the mental aspect, it would be your ability to align your actions to your words, so that whatever you say is what you do, and that you can be dependent to do that. And then spiritually, like you said, Sarah, it's not an external thing, but an internal thing. So there's this internal power and this internal presence that you have, which puts you in the state of I can. So no matter what comes up, you rise to the occasion because you have that mental construct and that belief and that power behind it that says I can. So I can take on 16 students. I can do this job and manage all these other things and get plenty of sleep and do my own routines and work out and all of that. And there's plenty more where that came from.
Yeah, and I feel like, I like that. And I feel like there is definitely like a spiritual, emotional, and physical aspect to it, because they're all connected. And I noticed it from the comments that we got when we were at the fair the other week. So for a small recap, we went to a fair, like a 2-day fair. So it's from early morning to late evening, 2 days in a row. And I mean, most people know that when you attend those kind of things, especially if you are, so we had like a booth, like a table, like a vendor space, and we were hosting workshops and also one-on-one sessions. So and it's a lot of people and there's lots of stuff going on, and usually you tend to get pretty drained from these things. And we were getting so many comments, like at the end of the day, like, wow, how can you maintain this level of energy and like frequency and positivity, and just like, yes, what do we need to do? Okay, we carry everything in there. It started to rain. It's like we have that capacity at this point, and that's like a practical example of what I feel is like personal power, that is a combination of the physical, emotional, and the spiritual power, because you don't get drained. I mean, you can get a little bit drained, but it's like it took 1 day and then we were all like back on. I mean, it was fine, it's like, for me, that's a practical, and it's not about being able to run a marathon. It's not that. It's like the stamina of doing things, holding space, having the capacity to do a lot of stuff and to hold. And I love that there's a lady that I look to when it comes to like money and abundance and feminine and like alignment, like, because I feel like most things are rooted in alignment and like lack of stagnation, like flow, like the chi, like a flow. And she says exactly like Simba says, we are bridges and bridges get tested. It's like before you can start to hold more, you will get tested to see if you can do that. So it's so much connected to this ability to hold more, like capacity. And that's where it's so directly connected to the nervous system and the ability. And as you said, like the amount of trauma or unprocessed stuff that we have that is like weighing us down, like as you said, like draining the energy. So as you free up this space, the personal power will automatically grow if you work on all levels at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, personal power is, I used to work as a personal trainer. Funny with the word, but, and I never had this rush, you know, when I was a personal trainer. I never, like, people like, oh, January must be so full for you, or, and I never had it. I had clients coming in all year around because I was working in a different way. But, you know, every now and then someone would come in January and kind of start working out like, oh, I want to do this New Year's resolution and so on, so on. And I would say anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks was roughly, like 6 weeks was very long, but anywhere from like 2 to 6 weeks, people buy year-long membership, and then there's no personal power for it. There's no stamina. And I don't think that that is because people are lazy or don't have energy or not motivated, not disciplined. It's just, you can't go from this level to this level, right? If you don't know where you're coming from, right? You can't just jump 10 steps ahead. You need to know where you're coming from. If you don't feel that you're motivated and disciplined, it's most likely not a lack of character. It's most likely a defensive mechanism. Something is feeling unsafe to the point where you're disconnecting from the experiences of your body, of sensations and so on, right? And that's the trauma work and a lot of the nervous system work. Doesn't mean that you had this big trauma that happened to you. It can just be that you never learn how to regulate stress. So let's just add, let's say you're doing good where you're at today, and I just add 10 employees that gonna email you and message you thing all the time. It's gonna come to a point where you're gonna freak out, right? I don't know what to do. Stop bothering me, leave me alone, right? Because that capacity is not there. If you start with 1 and then 2, and then you gradually build that capacity up to hold more and more and more, because you get habitualized, you get some routines in. After a while, it doesn't cost as much energy to do something. You know how to do something very efficient. You get a better technique, a better way of looking at it. But you also get less emotionally invested in each and everything that you do. You know when to let go, you know when to hold on. So I think experience is a big part when it comes to cultivating personal power, because a lot of people go head in, but there's no stamina in it, right? So it's really building it over a period of time. And that's when you start to notice these shifts, right? It's like a house, right? If you have a really crappy foundation that's not stable, that's not secured or fortified, and you build more and more levels on top of it, it's just a matter of time before it's going to crumble down. You need to build a solid foundation. And that's, you know, my upbringing, like coming from martial arts family. Start with the basics, you know, paint the fences, you do this, you wake up, you do fit certain things, you build a certain structure. And then after a while, you can build into the next step, into the next step. But once you get to the higher levels, it's you, right? You don't think about it. People are like, oh my God, how can you do all of these things? You don't think about it like you're doing a lot of things because you've done it gradually. So it's just a natural part of who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So organic growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a quote from a movie that you guys probably know, and it says, with great power comes
Great responsibility.
Exactly, right? And
Oh,
so
I heard someone say something else about that. That was like an old saying. What was
yeah,
that?
it is. I don't think it is an older saying. It probably goes back to martial arts, or something more ancient, or some system.
Yeah, but I heard like a new take on it. Okay, I'm gonna you keep on and I'm gonna see if I can find it.
But I think it really plays into what Simba was saying about the power is something that grows over time, and you have to be ready for it. You have to allow it inside of your body physically. And so when the power does increase, you're going to be tested on whether or not you have the capacity to use that power. So if if you were all of a sudden to be gifted with the power of flight, like you can just fly, would you take off and then fly to Africa and then then you're out of energy? Probably, right? So like you have to be mindful of the power that you do have and use it within the realm and the capacity of which you have, and not go outside of that. And then earlier, Sarah, you said something about like external power and internal power. And I think that, from a very young age in our society, we're taught to chase external power. And that external power usually comes through validation in some form. It's like, I have this job, I have this house, I have this PhD, I have this car, all of these external things. And we forget to develop the internal personal power. But really, if you can combine those things, if you can have all of those things and the personal power too, then you're really bridging both worlds, and you can have your cake and eat it too, if you do the work, to cultivate that personal power to match any external powers that you may be having or influencing.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's a history of a lot of people wanting. I mean, there's all of this, Star Wars. It's the good side and the dark side. With the personal power, you can use it to, a lot of different things. And through history, there's been a lot of people searching for this personal power, building up oneself, but then not using it, like using it to control external forces, like controlling others, because when you build up your personal power, it comes with spiritual abilities. So you can use that for good, or you can use it for bad, or you can use it for yourself. So it's like the difference for me with personal power. So you can kind of go two ways. You can use it to manipulate and to gain things by learning how to navigate the system and how to manipulate people and to do many different things. But that's like the external power. So it's like I use my power to control my external surroundings. But the personal power that we practice is to build yourself up with all of those abilities, but you use it it's like power over yourself. It's like self-mastery and what we call like impeccability and things like that, like knowing what to do in the moment, being able to practice what we preach, so to speak, like taking the pauses. We talked about reactivity a lot, like there's a spiritual practice to be able to hold that reactivity and to not act on it, but to transform it or transmute it within yourself. And you don't have to yell at anyone. You don't have to put your foot down. You don't have to, control things or situations or all of that. So for me, personal power is the ability to have personal power over myself, like how I want to use it, how I like to direct all my energy into my true purpose or my path or my destiny, or using it in that sense. And because it's an energy capacity that we will also use later on in life, sort of. So, but a lot of people are using it to gain something externally, like right here in this moment. And it's like used in a more non-harmonious way, if you say like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that word responsibility, your ability to respond to something, either something that happens within you or without you, and do you collectively use it for something good for others or just for yourself? I'm not saying it's a bad thing that you use things for your own good, right? Because if you don't have energy,
yeah,
it's going to be very hard to give someone else. So I'm not saying you should be a people pleaser and not fill yourself up before you give to others. It's not my point at all. But if you're unable to give to others, or if you come in from that fear point of view, scarcity or lack, that I don't want to share what I have, then there might be something to explore there, because there's a fear pattern or a belief system that there's not enough for all of us, or this is the way I have to do it, or so on. And also that factor of wanting control over others, right? That usually comes from some lack of control of oneself, or some lack of recognition or respect or self-love of who you are, right? So you need to get it through working through others. And that's just a face. That's just a face. And when it comes to energy, like when you're young, right? Like, I just remember, like, I'm not saying I'm old, but when I was younger,
But you are
spraying
saying
something.
that you're young.
I'm less young now than I used to be. Let's put it like that. Anyway, sprained an ankle, and it was like, half a day I was good, back to it. And now I'm like, I feel it 1-2 days, Okay. So you just become aware of that you don't have that natural wind of life, just overflow, that immortality that you think you have when you're young. You learn how to cultivate it and work with it in a different way as you age as well. And that's why some athletes can be better than younger talents that have more stamina, more energy, and everything, because they just know how to use it, have more experience, but they also cultivated that energy over years and know exactly when to use it at the right time. So even though you might not have more stamina, vitality than someone else, because they're younger than you and more fit, you have a different reservoir of energy that you can use, not necessarily to give you an advantage, but it just gives you another predisposition, and that keeps you going. And then you can maintain your practices as you age as well, without having to try to do it the way you did it when you were younger. You can grow stronger with age and not weaker when you do practices like internal arts and Tai Chi, Luban Pai, and all this kind of work that we do, because you really build yourself up. You build the fascia up, the energy system, and you really align the body on a cellular level, right? And you keep on doing that year after year after year, you're going to grow. It's like a bubble, right? It's just going to be more and more expansive and filled with energy.
I mean, it's so clear what you're saying, like the analogy of when we used to train martial arts in the same club in Sweden, MMA and jiu-jitsu, and I don't even know what their names were anymore, but submission wrestling, for instance, when you do the no-gi. So all the new guys, they were exhausted after sparring or training, and then the older guys, like with a bit more routine, they knew, they were just waiting, and then they went in like that and just demolished you. They were just waiting for an opening, and until that opening came, they didn't waste any energy. It's like they were just waiting, fumbling around, just following along, and then all of a sudden there's an opening, and then boom. So it's like it's this youth energy that you talk about, like tensing every muscle at all times, and just after 2 minutes you're exhausted. So it's like it is really, there's so much knowledge and wisdom in when to use what, seriously. To know when to get excited, know when to get stressed, It's like, this is nothing. There's no room for panic right now. There's no point. It's just nonsense. And then like, okay, now we need to, level up.
Yeah, 100%.
Any thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, I like that analogy about the older guys, or not just guys, but anyone who is doing a practice for a long time and really has the cultivation of the energetic aspect of it, because they realize that after doing a practice for a long period of time, you are able to manage your energy better over long periods of time. So when someone is new to something, they're likely to spend all of their energy quickly on it, because they don't understand the depth and complexity of it, and the holding space aspect, or the need to maintain a reserve. So you don't just come in the first minute and use all of your energy. There's save a little bit for later.
You might come in handy.
Yeah.
And also, like, this is It started a couple of years ago in sports. I don't know, a couple of years ago, might have been 10 years by now, since I haven't been really into sports for a while. But people, especially in martial arts, I remember many schools and clubs that I saw that were just like, wow, they were smashing it, going hard and like really pushing through. And I remember for myself, I didn't resonate with that. And then we came to the MMA gym where I trained, and our main teacher, the head teacher, very intelligent guy, was was always talking about the volume, like the volume concept. And I was like, what do you mean volume concept? He said, well, the longer you do something, the less damage you acquire, the more repetitions you get into your nervous system, the better you gradually will be. It might not be these peaks, but you're gradually just moving forward. And since you don't have a lot of injuries and stuff like that, if you train intelligently, I mean, you never know when you compete, but intelligent training, and you just build successful habits of growing that energy or that skill or whatever that is. And that's similar with personal power. Like he used to go at us like after a workout, you're like really sweaty and things, and guys were sitting there with sweaty t-shirts. He's like, take all your wet clothes off, put on dry clothes, let's talk. Like just small things like that I remember that we were just doing all the times. And I started this professional group, and it's like 5-6 days a week, and I was like, holy shit. But just the thing, just the way we did it, the way we came together as a group, the people that been there longer lifted other people up, sometimes literally, and then just gradually everyone just grows and move forward, right? And it's really a culture that you're setting with it. So I think that's also part of the personal power, that you have that spaciousness in you, so you can invite other into it and you can make a culture of it, and then everyone raises each other, right? So it's something that you can teach other by being it, right? Like that you are embodiment for it, and then you help others to go to that point. And it really starts with small habits here and there. Like I usually look at it like when it comes to energy or discipline or anything that people want to do, they say, where do you start? You start at a reverse, right? Like, okay, how do we get more energy? What do you do before you go to bed, right? Can you have a little bit of downtime? Can you avoid the screens? Can you avoid eating food? Okay, how do you prepare so you can sleep good? What you do is you wake up, so you start your day good. And then just start with small routines like this to build a habit within you. And after a while, your habits are just like generators. It just generates energy and vitality and motivation, creativity into your life, right? But it's habitualized. So now you're not thinking about it. And someone comes and asks you, like, oh my God, how do you have so much energy? How can you do all of these things? Especially the Eastern athletes. I remember I did some training in strength training, like powerlifting. And there was this Russian world champion that came to Sweden once and did a workshop. And I went there and people asked him questions, and it was hilarious, right? They asked him, like, what kind of food you eat? What do you mean? I eat food. And everyone was like, yeah, but what kind of food? Well, this food for competition. Like he thought we were idiots when we asked him question, because he didn't understand how much knowledge he had, because he was just doing it in a culture year after year after year. So it's like, it was just stupid questions. But when you start to ask him detailed questions and he understood this is not what everyone does, wow, you start to realize how much knowledge there was that was just, you was nothing with it. I'm not more than you. This is what we do and this is what we get. And there's really no ego in it. There was nothing. It was just a habit of success. So you can build it in so many different ways, but it really comes down to your daily practices, right? And not starting too hard with it. You start like, oh, I'm going to work out 4 times a week. I'm going to do this and that. 1-2 week, you're going to crumble. Start small and gradually build it up. And you're going to build that power. You're going to build that capacity. And if something comes in and stops you, well, that's when we do the work that we do, right? That's when you can come to us and we can help you if there's a blockage that's holding you back from moving forward. Because that block just comes up to teach you, okay, this is what you need to let go of so you can go to the next level. And we usually think, I'm doing something wrong, I'm this, I'm that, and then we stop. No, it's just an opportunity to grow, right? When you start to feel bad when you do something, it's an opportunity to grow, either to rest or to go through.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's so many ways that you can work with the personal power. And when it's what we do with people. It's like we assess them and we get to know them very quickly, and it's so easy for us to see what they can change in their life so that they can cultivate more vitality, more power, more balance, more grounding. So it's like all of it, everything that we do is building you up for personal power. And it's about like how you execute your days, basically. It's like all of the things that I mean, there's just so many aspects that you can work on. That's why it's so easy for us to create an individual program, because we can see like, oh, if you would do this and this and this, that would benefit you massively. But we can intuitively feel that they are not ready for that. It's too big of a step. The nervous system is not ready. There's trauma in around it, there's stress around it, belief system, blockages, whatever. But it's so easy to us to see, okay, we can do that. So it could be 12 different things that work on different levels of the body, the system, the physical, emotional, spiritual. So it's so easy for us to kind of turn up the volume on different aspects without the person feeling overwhelmed, so it can last for a long time. Because January is around the corner and everyone knows exactly what it's like. I mean, it's almost a joke, like people run out on the field so motivated, and then February they kind of so it's like building something that lasts over time instead of this spike and crash kind of thing. So anything that anyone wants to add before we close the shop for today?
I kind of like to add the piece of when you look at that January spike, when people, I mean, I said personal training, it can be anything, a new endeavor, a new habit. Like there's a lot of New Year's resolutions, and it's been for many years. Big part of it is actually, depending on how you work and how your life look like, is that you get time off whatever you're doing. You get a perspective shift, you get time off what you're doing, and you meet other people that usually triggers you. That's called family. Hopefully not too much. And you start to benchmark. Who did this? Who did that? Who did that? Right? Either you do it subconsciously, or they do it, or there's a habit, right? And you start to look towards something, what's good, what's not good, and all of that. So a big piece of it is just don't work all the way up to there. Take a few pauses sometimes here and there, a week and a day or two, a couple of times throughout your day. And then you don't have to accumulate this big lifelong or year-long anxiety to December to do something in January and you burst out of energy, right? Take a few pauses every day and really look what you want to do, what will make you feel happy, what will move you forward, right? Like these micro pauses and micro gestures, and you slowly, gradually get there. And I have clients that I work with for 2-3 years sometimes, and they're like, oh, nothing is happening. And I was like, okay, let's go back to what you wrote when we started. Oh, that's not a goal. Well, you wrote this, right? Yeah, but this is, yeah, that cannot be a goal. It's so obvious because they already cleared it, right? But conceptually, you don't understand it because you look at yourself every day, so you can't see progress. That's why it's nice to work with someone sometimes, because you get like a reality check, but also to journal a little bit for yourself, because you get that reference, right? You go from the micro to the macro, you can actually see what you have done. So kind of long-winded, but pauses, right? Take pauses throughout your day and pauses throughout your year, and then you will kind of gradually not build up that big anxiety that pushes you into a burnout at the beginning of the year.
Maybe take a pause.
Yeah, take a pause.
Long-winded.
Maybe take a pause.
No, I'm just joking.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this personal power discussion there's so many aspects, and this is just a very small piece of it that we have discovered or discussed today. And we will also show up next week with more in-depth discussions about personal powers. If you have any questions on the topic, you can, until next week, you can let us know. Just hand them over and we will happily answer them. And if you want to do like a couple of changes in your life and you feel like you really need this personal power in your life, and I think we touched upon it, but with this expansion of personal power, it just affects every single part of your life. It's like you become better at everything, basically. It's almost like the TRE, you know, when you ground your nervous system, you get better at everything. It's one of these things, like one size fits all, and it works for everyone and everyone gets better. It's like it's a proven solution. It's amazing with personal power. And our retreats, they are a deep dive to really remove like energetical, emotional and physical blockages that keeps you from maintaining and cultivating this personal power. And the holistic lifestyle redesign mentorship programs, they are 6 months commitment, but you do it from your home. So that's when we implement the strategies and the methods in your life, in your practical, like in your everyday life. So then to build something sustainable. So it's not the January gym situation. It's something that you can actually do for a longer period of time. And we have a campaign, New Year's campaign on both offers. So if you sign up before the end of January, you get like I think it's a $2,500 discount. It goes for both offers. So if you're interested in that, just let us know. Tune into livingwiththespirit.com to read more and send us all your questions. We're happy to answer. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great day and lots of love, and see you soon.
See you soon.
Ciao.
Ciao.